welcome to the 13th Annual Bushwick Film Festival's first ever movie industry conference. It is presented by Broadway Stages and Heart City. We'll be dropping off those links on your chat very soon. Um, so we want to thank them for helping us present this first ever virtual movie industry conference. Do check them out, okay? I am Sumaya Onuna, the panels and conversations programmer for the 13th Annual Bushwick Film Festival, and we are excited to have you here with us today. And thank you so much for spending your weekend with us. We appreciate that very much. This year, the theme of transformation is a glowing butterfly, and which is a visual representation. The festival celebrates not only filmmakers for always reminding us for our inherent courage and perseverance through their characters, but also how much we continue to transform as a better global community. So with that note, we will get started. Let us know what your aha moment be, because there will be a lot of learning and discovery over these next 2 days, today and tomorrow. With that note, we have with us our very first guest, our speaker for the day, Dana Lerner, for the workshop on social media for storytellers. Woo-hoo! Dana is a Tony Award nominated theater producer and entrepreneur. She's the founder and CEO of Red Pelican Creative, social media management and brand enhancement company focused primarily in the arts and entertainment spaces. She's a faculty member at the Einhorn School of the Performing Arts, teaching social media course for artists. We are so grateful to have Dana with us today. And with that note, please welcome her with a virtual round of applause. Dana, take it away.
Hello, thank you everyone. And Sumaya, thank you for that lovely introduction. Great, starting my video now, amazing. Hello, thank you everyone. Happy to be here on this gorgeous Saturday morning. So before we get started, just in the chat, if you wanted to just quickly share sort of what hats you wear in the industry, or wherever you're coming to us from, right? So whether you're an artist, an actor, a director, a producer, someone who just likes film and entertainment, feel free to put that in the chat before we get started. And questions, I'll leave time for questions sort of in between each section. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A. If there's a burning question, feel free to let me know, but there will be time for questions at the end. So great. If I think we'll just get started then. So social media is one of the best tools that you have as an artist, as a creator. And it's also one of the best things you have for your individual brand. We buy into the people that we care about. We buy into their stories and we buy into their lifestyle. As a creator, as a storyteller, as an artist, why is social media important? You can reach your audience. You can meet them where they're at, right? Of course, you can target people. You can use data to inform your decisions. But you can also educate and add value. And you can also inspire. And of course, many of us, want to sell tickets or sell or generate income from something. So those are sort of all of the reasons I think social media is important. My two favorites, though, are to educate and add value, followed closely by to inspire. So things we're going to cover today, two big picture ideas, right? Social media is about communicating with your audience and not at them. So it's a little counterintuitive, but social media is not about you. It's really the spoken with, spoken back type of conversation, right? Think about when a brand or someone, an actor likes a comment on, you comment on their photo and they like it and they respond, right? We like that type of engagement. We want to be we want to experience someone's life as they're experiencing it, right? You know, where we want to be a part of this community. I think now more than ever, we want to feel attached and be a part of something. And social media helps us do that, right? And so as a creator, as a storyteller, how can we empower your audience to care about you and what you're doing? So with this idea that social media is all about communicating with your audience and not at them, everything leads back to you, sort of audience first. And the second sort of big idea is building your brand. With every post, think about what story you're trying to tell about you and your work and who you want to tell it to. So off of that, you know, what I would suggest for your brand voice, right? We sort of just dropped that, you know, come up with 3 adjectives or words that define your voice or your persona. What is sort of quote unquote on brand, right? I know that word gets thrown around a lot. What is on brand? On brand is sort of like what your fans, your followers can expect to see from you with your content, right? You know, sometimes you might see a post from someone, you know, you follow someone and they're posting all this content about their work and their travels and things like that. And then you see a post that's sort of completely you've never seen before, content you've never seen posted from them before. And you're sort of like, oh, that's weird. That's not what I expect from them. So, you know, sort of think about what is on brand for you? What makes you, you know, what makes you you? And then sort of off of that, come up with a mood board. So, you know, that is sort of, you know, 25, you know, 15 to 25 words or phrases that relate to you and your brand. What makes you unique? You know, this mood board sort of helps create content. You're creating the sandbox in which you play, right? It helps with the content, but also staying on brand. So if you have sort of 25 things that make you unique or just that make you, you know, that helps you just come up with the content, right? For me, I'm an athlete. I'm in the theater. I love to travel. I'm really passionate about my alma mater. So all of those things are just things that are constantly, I'm posting about on my channel. And people know to expect that from me. I think if I posted something sort of outside of that sandbox, it would maybe not get great engagement because it would catch people sort of off guard and because it's unexpected from me. That's not to say that unexpected content is not great. Just in the short time we have together, I'm just sort of making a blanket statement. There are, of course, exceptions to things that I'm saying. But if you need help coming up with sort of words, phrases, ideas sort of about you for your mood board, consider talking to friends, clients, colleagues about why they care about you and your work. And so as you start to think about and create your brand voice, here's some other things just to keep in mind. Everything you put on social media should have a purpose, right? Why are you posting this? Quality over quantity, right? Those two things, you know, I think we often get bogged down, especially now, right? I am online all of the time because there's not much else to do, right? Except doom scroll. But I think really think about, you know, what do you do? Who is this content for? And what makes you stand out? I think those 3 things, just to make sure that you're posting the best content possible and promoting yourself in the best light. You know, of course, we all want to post content all of the time, but I think it's really helpful to think, who is this for? Why am I posting it? And that will help you sort of shift your thinking. This is a helpful tip a lot with shifting from a personal to a professional brand or page too, right? A lot of artists start usually with sort of a personal social media, personal Instagram. And then as they grow, they sort of want to shift to a more professional page. And that work comes with like the shifting of their brand. One thing that I always like to think about is no one cares about the hero. It's really all about the journey. And it's really all about the stories you tell. You are storytellers. So I think we see a lot on social media that everything is great and beautiful and look at how amazing everything is. But that's not like fun to see. If you're following someone and they only post how great everything is, sort of doesn't make you feel good. But, you know, right, think about what you do, who is it for, what makes you stand out. What is the journey? Like, what is your story? And how does that fit into your brand, right? What are the setbacks that you've encountered, the hurdles you've overcome, right? I think that is also just equal, if like that's more important, if not equally important, to, you know, sharing all the great and wonderful things about you and your work. And I think as storytellers, you'll have a unique story to tell in us on social media. You know, another thing, sort of looping back to that first point, right? Social media is not really about you; it's about your audience. You know, treat your audience like MVPs. Build loyalty, awareness, and relationships. You know, this communicating with your audience, not at them. Once you start to cultivate that community and that engagement, your fans will show up for anything. Right? Once, you know, investing your audience before asking them to invest in you. I think that's always really important. You know, Nike posts, I mean, Nike does a great job, so that's not a good example. But, you know, if we are constantly being sold to on social media, right? Buy this, buy this, buy this, you know, why? Why should I care about? Oh, it's because you engage with me, you treat me well, you care about me, things like that. You know, personalized content and communication is great. Coupled with real-time consistent updates. You know, one thing that I always recommend is to, after you post something, to stay online for about 15 to 30 minutes afterwards to engage with all those comments as they come in, sort of quickly. So now we sort of talked about big picture ideas. We're gonna shift into what to post. So in a world where you post, well, does anyone have any questions before we move on? I didn't see any in the chat, or I didn't see any hands raised. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Okay, great. So in a world where so what to post? In a world where you post 10 times a week, not necessarily saying that you need to post 10 times a week, but just for math purposes, in a world where you post 10 times a week, 70%, so 7 of those posts, should be content to build the brand. So that is things from your mouth, how-tos, tips and tricks, updates, free information that adds value to the audience. You know, 20% of that content. So, oh no, they just started doing construction above me on a Saturday. Apologies. So 20% of that content, so 2 of those posts should be, you know, content about other projects or things that you support. So stuff that didn't come from you, but, you know, testimonials, reviews, press, things you didn't create, but that you share, that, you know, feed back into your brand. Right, those reviews are great. Interesting articles about your industry, about your medium, always great. And then 10%, so only one of those, would be a call to action or self-promotion. So that is, you know, buy the tickets to see the show. But with that, I would always recommend an action. Can you hear the noise? Is that coming through? Or is that just really loud on my end?
Yeah, it's a little bit, but it's okay.
Okay, my apologies. So the action, so buy the tickets, see the show. With a call to action, I always recommend some type of action and benefit. So why does it benefit the buyer? As opposed to just saying, you know, buy tickets to see my show, you know, buy tickets so that you support emerging artists, right? Like sort of this, in this vein of getting people to care about you and invest in you and your story, not just buy tickets, but, you know, buy tickets so that you support new work, so that you support my first show, things like that. So just to quickly recap, if you post 10 times a week, 7 or anytime, right? 70% of the posts you do a week should be content to build the brand from your mouth. 20% should be content about other projects and things you support. So like reviews, testimonials, articles, and then, and then 10% only sort of one of those posts, if you post 10 times a week, would be a call to action, which is, you know, buy the ticket so that you benefit. So, a call to action, do this so that you benefit this way. So we talked about what to post, and now we're going to switch into how often to post and when to post. It depends on the platform and the content and what's going on in the world, in your world, right? Right now I think we are just seeing a lot of content being pushed out for everything. But a good rule of thumb is to, I just see that I was never on screen. What a day. I apologize for the noise. I don't know why construction.
You've been on screen the whole time. You're doing great.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Yep. You're 100% there.
Amazing. We're doing this live. I appreciate everyone's patience and bearing with me here. So how often to post, when to post. It depends on the platform and the content, as I said, but a good rule of thumb is several times a week. Not necessarily every day unless there's something huge coming or happening, right? Lead up to awards, lead up to a festival, a launch, things like that. A helpful thing to look at would be insights and data from your platform backends. So on Instagram, you are able to see when your audience is sort of online, things like that. There are third-party applications that also help with analytics and backend, but Twitter, Facebook, Instagram all have backend platform analytics that you can check in. Ideal times to post. I am going to put a file. I may not be able to attach. Well, so use data from your audience, but I can also send around a screenshot of sort of broad best times to post. Use data to inform your audience, but also use common sense, right? I think it depends. Some of you are on the West Coast, I saw. Some of you are on the East Coast. If your audience is more East Coast, don't post at 9 p.m. Pacific, right? Because then your East Coast audience will be asleep, right? So it's sort of ideal times to post. Use data to inform your audience, but also common sense, right? After 12 a.m. on any coast, most people are probably sleeping. So, I think it's trial and error as well. Social media is a living, breathing thing. So you can have a hypothesis, test it out, look at your data, and then reevaluate as it comes. So that's always something to consider as well. It's not like print or another type of or outdoor, another type of advertising where you set it and forget it. You sort of you can work with it. The platforms you post on now. So I see a question here. How do you read your insights correctly? We could perhaps chat about that offline because I don't know if we'll have time to cover that here, but or we can circle back in the end, but there are very helpful articles and videos to help you understand your insights well. I think also, 3 p.m. is a good time sort of generally, right? 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 and 9 are sort of the best sort of buckets, they say, right? However, in the pandemic, no one is on their way to work at 9 a.m., right? No one is really taking lunch at noon anymore. So, in 3 p.m., no one's going to get their afternoon coffee, right? And 6, no one's leaving the office, right? So it's sort of, those were sort of the general best times to post before the pandemic. Now everyone is sort of online all the time. So I think, we'll talk a little bit about how to make a greater impact in a bit, but I think, reading the insights, understanding your audience, we can either chat more offline about that or experiment with it. If you're not liking the results you get at 3 p.m., try 4 or noon, right? I think if it says 3 p.m., adjust and look at that data and then try again. So where to post? The platforms you post on. So Facebook. I personally think Facebook is making a comeback. I know I think a lot of people just hate Facebook, but I think you can storytell for longer on Facebook. I think, you can have really long posts with words, copy, and you can have long videos. And we go on Facebook to waste time. And you're probably saying like, Dana, I spend way more time on Instagram. You would think that, but like really look next time you go on Facebook versus Instagram. We spend 20 more minutes on Facebook than we do on any of the other platforms because it's more intense and more interactive, right? You see someone's post and it says see more and you're reading this novel, you're watching a video, and then it bumps you to another video and you're just sort of down this rabbit hole of Facebook. So I think Facebook is great because it's making a comeback. Facebook and Instagram Live are great for behind the scenes access, and they're very interactive with your audience. You can get comments and questions in real time. I don't know if any of you have experience with any of the live features. They are a little finicky. So it is, I always caution against them unless a really good plan or rollout is in place. Because oftentimes when I've done them or been a part of them, something has gone wrong. Yes, it does help to announce you're going live. Let people know ahead of time. Sometimes they can set reminders. Additionally, if you remind people ahead of time, tell your friends to tune in and start posting questions and comments on the live video really early, because then it looks like to everyone else that people are engaged and commenting, and Facebook thinks, and Instagram too, is like, oh, people are engaging with this. That's awesome. So if you're going live, tell your friends to tune in and start commenting early and often. Instagram. I get a lot of questions about Instagram. I see another question. Facebook. Well, I'll go through Instagram and Twitter, and then I'll circle back to your question. So Instagram, you can have up to 30 hashtags on Instagram. And I always say, pick good ones. You're like, Dana, good ones. What does that mean? Not too small and not too big. Sort of like the Goldilocks, right? So you can look and see on the hashtags in Instagram how many people are using that hashtag. Hashtag NYC, millions of people use that hashtag. That's too broad. Even if the photo is about New York or in New York City, too broad. That's not going to help your content be seen. And for those who don't know what hashtags are basically like file folders for people to follow different types of content. So Bushwick Film Fest is the hashtag for this festival. So anyone who's posting about the film festival can use that hashtag. The festival is following it. They're engaging with the content. Other panelists and other attendees are following it, engaging with that content. So anytime you're posting something on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook hashtags don't really do anything on Facebook. But on Twitter and Instagram, they allow people to like find your content and make it a part of a larger conversation. So, not too big and not too small. So hashtag Dana's apartment, way too small. Hashtag New York City, way too big. But it depends on what you're posting, right? So one thing that I always recommend, come up with 15 sort of evergreen hashtags for you and your brand that you'll use all the time, and put them in a note on your phone. So then you can just copy and paste them under your photo. That just helps, keep it smarter, not harder, right? You're going to use those hashtags. So just, keep them somewhere handy and then reshare them later. But definitely go through and look through all these hashtags. Make your mood board and figure out sort of what the hashtags are, figure out what those hashtags are going to be and find them. You can search them on Instagram, and Instagram will tell you how many people have used the hashtag. So I would recommend like the low 10,000s to the high hundreds of thousands. In the low millions is okay if it's something like very cool. It's just sort of hard if millions of people are posting about the same thing. It's just sort of hard for your content to be seen. But that's always something I recommend. I would also recommend putting the hashtags in a comment under your photo. So, you might see that people do the ... and put the hashtags sort of under the copy. That's fine. For an aesthetic look, I like to put a few hashtags in the main body of the caption and then put the rest in a comment below the photo. One, because I just think it looks nicer, but two, it sort of helps with the algorithm because Instagram thinks someone is commenting on your photo really early on. So there you go. I think location is also really important. So you're also able to check in at a location whenever you post a photo. And I always recommend, while using hashtags, also always using a location. Again, not too broad and not too small, but people also search for locations too, and so they can find your content that way. Stories. So again, Instagram, that was more for posts. For stories, you can sort of do, and again, Instagram, I would only recommend posting a few times a week, if not once a week or every 10 days. Their algorithm keeps changing all of the time. It's sort of crazy. But again, look at your data, see what you're doing. For stories, you can have unlimited stories. I would recommend no more than 15 a day, just because we've all seen, unless something big is happening. Again, there's always an exception. But you've always seen friends who you're just like clicking. It's like, okay, I get it. Your vacation was amazing. But again, you can use check-ins on like geolocations on stories and also hashtags on stories. The locations more so, I think, move the needle than hashtags on stories. But that's sort of it for Instagram. Twitter, you can tweet all the time. It's more of a conversation, right? You see live tweets happening, for the debates or for when an actor takes over the social media for like the first episode of a season of a TV show. For hashtags, you can use 1 to 3 in a tweet. I think any more than that sort of doesn't really do anything for you. But again, those hashtags should be relevant to the conversation. We had a question, a Facebook personal page or make a fan page or make a group. So that's a good question. If you're shifting from a personal to a professional brand, I would recommend having a Facebook page and connecting it to your Instagram and making your Instagram a professional, like a business page. And then the two can be linked together. And then of course, through Facebook, you can run ads. So Facebook manages all the ads. We're not gonna have time to go into paid content today, but I would recommend, if you're shifting to a professional brand, a Facebook page, a professional Instagram page. You can still keep your personal page, right? If you're an individual, you just might need to then post twice. But if you're planning to have sort of strangers follow you and your content, I think it brings a lot of people comfort to like not have those people not have access to their photos from high school, and I guess too, you can also do a Facebook group. Someone just has to monitor it. But I would say start with a page and an Instagram. And then if you feel the need to get a group up, then switch to that. And one more question before we move on here. If you're waiting to go public with a new Instagram page, would you recommend having a few posts up? So that's a good question. So this is like a chicken and an egg situation from Daniela. If you're waiting to go public with a new Instagram, would you recommend having a few posts up and ready to go before you go public, or go public as soon as your first post is up? And it is really, the answer is sort of whatever you're comfortable with. If you want people to engage with the content, so if you're gonna go live and no one follows you, does it matter if you have content to see? On the other hand, you post some content, right? Like, so you go live with the page, there's nothing on there. Great, you're gonna post and build your audience as you go. On the other hand, you're gonna, try to go out and get followers and things like that while there's content out there. Did that make any sense? It's sort of like a chicken and an egg, right? So it really is, if you have some like sort of teaser content that you don't mind people not seeing, right? But you want to have something up, then do that, right? Maybe it's a logo or coming soon, something like that. But if you have content that you only want people to see, I would launch it, make the announcement, and then sort of tell your friends and family, go follow this, engage with this, things like that. But it really is what you're comfortable with, but it is that weird sort of chicken and an egg situation. Advice for making a greater impact. tag and cross promote across platforms. So one thing that I see a lot of, on Instagram, there's an option to share from Instagram to Facebook and Twitter. I always recommend that you natively post on each channel that you're posting on. So post on Instagram, and then take that photo and post it on Facebook, and then take that photo and post it on Twitter. The reason is, one is the algorithms. Just when you share from one channel, one platform to another, the algorithms just get a little weird and they sort of push it down and don't like it. The other is that you can optimize content for each platform. And that's really what you want to do. For links, for aesthetic, things like that. You might see when people share from Instagram to Facebook that you still get their handles. It's like at, written out Bushwick Film Festival, as opposed to being tagged where it's blue, and you can click through on that on their tag and go back to the Bushwick Facebook page. And on Twitter, when you share from Instagram to Twitter, the photo shows up as a link that takes you back to Instagram. And so if you want to share a photo, you want to see the photo. You don't want to be taken back off the platform to go to Instagram. So biggest tip, I think, is post natively on each channel and optimize the content for each platform. So on Facebook, as we said, you can storytell for longer. So you might want to make the caption a bit longer on Facebook than it would be on Twitter, which has a character limit. Tailor the text based on the network and the audience. Facebook tends to skew a little older, and you can storytell for longer. Instagram, a little bit younger. Your audience on Instagram might prefer a different type of content. So things to keep in mind: share and create unique, creative, and personal content with fans and followers, right? It's not about you, it's about them, but it's about your journey, and you want to bring them with you. Engage and respond to comments quickly. As we said, stay sort of online after a post. And then optimize content for each platform. Those are things I really think are important. And again, right, invest in your audience before asking them to invest in you. It really goes a long way to respond to a comment or a question. One thing I get asked a lot about too is organic growth, which is my personal favorite. I prefer organic growth over buying followers or promoting content, things like that. Organic growth takes time. And that's probably not an answer. If someone was going to ask Dana, how do I grow my social media following organically? It just takes time. And I'm sorry that that's the answer, but that's how you build an engaged audience. If you have 1 million followers and you only get 50 likes on a photo, that tells me that you don't have an engaged audience. But if you have 100 followers and you get 50 likes on a photo, that tells me you have a really engaged audience, right? So those are sort of vanity metrics, right? Likes and followers. Of course, they're sexy. That's why they're called vanity metrics. And everyone loves them. But also try to think about engagement in addition to, not instead of, but in addition to. I think a lot of time, right, if you see a lot of people with followers or with a lot of likes, think about what that means in terms of their engagement. But organic growth takes time. Unfortunately, I would not recommend buying followers. I don't think that works. It works in that you get followers. I just don't think it actually then helps you reach your goals, which leads me to goals. Social media is great. It's fun. But I am a data-oriented, goal-oriented person. So I always recommend setting goals that are relevant, attainable, achievable, and measurable, right? If you're like, Dana, I want to grow by 10,000 followers in a month. I'd be like, okay, well, that is measurable. Is it relevant? Maybe. Is it attainable? I don't know. I don't know if 10,000 a month is attainable. But if you were like, Dana, I want to grow my following. Okay. I want to post, and to do that, I'm going to post 3 times a week. My goal is to post 3 times a week on Instagram. Okay, that sounds pretty attainable if you have the content. Is that measurable? It is, because you can either say yes or no. Did I post 3 times a week? Yes or no? You know, and it is relevant. If you want to build your followers, you need to put out content. So definitely think of goals, and also figure out how to measure them. Another thing for organic growth too that I should have mentioned is put your handles everywhere, right? On your website, in a bio, in your email signature. Another thing I would recommend is having your handles be the same across every platform, just so you only need to list it once. But that's just a quick thing. And so before we head into Q&A, I just want to say four thoughts to live by. Emulate who inspires you, right? Think about the type of content and the people that you like and the people you follow and why you like them. Create often, share your passions, and let them know you're human. And again, right, I'm letting you know I'm human. There is construction going on the sidewalk outside. There's construction going on above me. I apologize and appreciate your patience. But I think those are the sort of the thoughts to live by there. And with that, I will shift into some Q&A. I see we have some questions already in here. So what are apps? What are good apps to use? So I use Hootsuite to schedule content in advance with my pages, for the pages that I manage. I use TweetDeck. TweetDeck is free, and it's only for Twitter, but TweetDeck is free. A program that is more costly is Sprout Social, also really great. That's more for like large organizations, I would say. But Hootsuite, Buffer is good. I'm sorry you're having problems with Buffer, but TweetDeck is good. Hootsuite, Sprout Social are some that I would recommend. Another thing too, it depends on like what you're trying to use these platforms for. It might just be easier, unfortunately, to just do everything manually. Because social media is a living, breathing thing. Sometimes if you set it and forget it, you schedule a post and then forget about it, something could have changed, right? So it might just be helpful to create a calendar for yourself where you know, like, okay, today I'm posting this, and Tuesday I'm posting this, right? And just sort of set 10 minutes in your day to post and then do that. Another question. I'm having trouble keeping up with comments or questions if I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Any suggestions? Yes. So one, if you stay online for 30 minutes after the post is out, you might get a bulk of those questions and comments sort of done, right? Like, so sort of just in that first period of time. The other thing that I would say is create a sort of like a response document, right? So go and look at all of the questions that you get, all of the questions and comments that you get asked most often, and create sort of like similar to those evergreen hashtags, create an evergreen question and response document. That way you can just plug it and play, right? It helps you, so you're not recreating the wheel each time. If someone's gonna ask you the same thing over and over again, or some variation of the same thing, you can do that. If a lot of those could just be like, thank you so much, or like, appreciate your support, things like that. Others can be a bit more in depth, like, tickets are on sale here, they go live, we're performing here, things like that. So it could just be, broad or specific, but I always recommend creating a document that, that you can just plug and play. Another question, can you check, is the jackhammering really loud for you all?
No,
No? Okay.
it's barely audible.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Or I appreciate you just saying that if it is.
No, it's fine. It's perfect timing.
Okay. Can you, let me answer this live. Can you check analytics on personal IG pages or only professional pages? Only professional pages, unfortunately. But what you could do, right, if you didn't want to change it to professional page, you could just look and see how many followers you have and calculate the how many likes you get, and then calculate your engagement rate. That of course doesn't help you see your reach or your impressions, things like that. But that's a way to do it when you don't have a professional page. There are, and I believe you can only check them, even on a third-party platform, you can only check them on, like if you have a business page. I saw another question. Any advice in building collaborations with film festivals for extra? I don't. Advice for building collaborations with, I mean, I think that's tricky because it's a film festival and they're sort of their own brand and they're going to do their own thing. I think being able to articulate the value that you bring and the value that you add would be helpful, right? If you have 10,000 followers, you can cross promote, right? You can say, hey, and again, I'm speaking, I don't know what the festival is doing. They probably have their own social media plan. But you could say, hey, we're posting about our being in the festival. Are you going to post, are you going to post about us being in the festival? I'm pretty sure that any festival or screening you're a part of would post about it. So it's sort of hard to say, but I think, again, if you can create an engaged following, an engaged community, and you go to someone and say, hey, we have this engaged community, we're posting about you, would you be interested in collaborating with us to post about us? I think that's always helpful. Are there any other questions? Please put them in the Q&A box there. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Oh, stories versus posts. How important are stories versus posts? Well, stories go away in 24 hours, whereas posts sort of stay forever, right? So, but stories are seen by more people. You'll see on your Instagram, that stories are seen by significantly more people than would have liked your post, right? Just because the way that the algorithms are different. Stories are chronological. The algorithm is like whoever you engage with more, or some content that's getting a lot of engagement that Instagram thinks you'd want to see. So I think saying what's important is hard. I think both are useful. Both are useful. And I think, for stories, you can save them to a highlight so they live there forever. Stories are helpful for sort of like the moments in between a post, if that makes sense, right? To keep people engaged. And then their post is like the culmination of something. I see, I have two more questions here. Are apps like Crowdfire actually useful? I think, again, it depends on what you're using them for, right? Like anything, what is the goal of this? If it's to help you schedule and manage your posts or track your data, things like that, then yes. If you're fine to do it on your own, then it's perhaps not useful. Another question, I post stuff about my film work on my personal Instagram, which is private. Is it better to make it public or make a totally separate account for my professional work and not mix with my personal stuff? That's a great question. Goes back to the brand, like the brand idea, right? On a private Instagram account, hashtags aren't useful because because it's private, a hashtag doesn't do anything, right? So if you use a hashtag, someone who doesn't follow you wouldn't be able to see it. So if you want to reach a lot of people, I would recommend setting all of your channels to public, unless you don't want the public to see your personal stuff, in which case then you would create this sort of professional brand, which wouldn't mix with your personal stuff. However, if you go through this branding exercise and you find that your personal and your professional do sort of mix, then I would consider, mixing the two, as opposed to just keeping them completely separate. You can mix them in. And so that's something just to think about. But it is, if you're trying to reach more people, I would always recommend having a public profile, just because that's how you're going to reach more people. And I hope that answered the question there.
That was amazing, Dana. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we learned a lot. I definitely did. And I'm going to use those tips for my next branding and social media. I think it's going to help us a lot. Thank you so much for that. So everyone follow Dana on Twitter. And also we have our next panelist with us. Dana, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone. It was great to chat. And I hope to see you soon.